Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 450 of Ink in Your Veins. I'm Rachael Herron, and I'm so thrilled to be here today with Polly Campbell. You are going to love this episode. Polly is a force of nature, and she is so inspirational. I can guarantee you will love this episode. And also, she tells probably the best story I have heard so far about finding ink in her veins and a teacher who was so incredibly special. Please stick around and listen to this interview. You will not regret it. What has been going on around here? I've just been doing a lot of behind the scenes kind of work as well as the normal writing. Uh, but now that Unstuck is off of my plate and I am going into editing the next memoir, which has been backburnered for a while called The Fix. Another thing that I'm doing with my work hours is getting backlist in order, really getting backlist in order so that I can sell more of it and make more money. I have backlist. I have books out there. I'm going to try to make them sell better by putting some energy and some ads into it and see what I can do. I'm really enjoying the playing and the experimentation, but it is a lot of fiddly little stuff that I'm doing, like adjusting covers and keywords and blurbs and bolding this and not bolding that word and making all those kind of little decisions, which I actually really like to do. I kind of love to just go down the rabbit hole of starting to do one thing and then when you open it, you realize, oh, and I haven't looked at that and I need to adjust that and I need to go into that program and do that. There are a lot of people who hate this. I enjoy it when I have time for it. Most of the time, I do not have time for it. But right now, I'm making the time for it because I am prioritizing making money from writing and from the backlist. So that's what I've been doing, and it's been super fun. What else have I been doing? It has been awesome to be in Rachel Says Right. We have some new members over there. You can always go look at patreon.com/Rachel and join us at the $2 a month level. You get to write with us, and it is so cool and so fun. And I want to share just a comment I got from a friend and someone who is in the Rachel Says Plan uh, Patreon level, which is where we meet once a month and we talk about planning. We talk about planning our writing, and most of all, we talk about rejiggering the goals because goals move. We miss goals. That's what we do as human beings. And how do we keep going no matter what? And this comment came in from Erica this weekend. With permission, I will share it. They say, this is a sort of a tool, I guess, a mental one. I've been reading a really good book. And usually the thought that occurs to me is, God, I want to write a book like this. Why did someone else get to write it? This time, though, I had the thought, I'm so glad someone else wrote this book so that I didn't have to, and I can just enjoy it instead of doing all that work. Ever since I had that thought, I've been using it anytime any hint of envy of someone else's success comes up. Thank God they wrote that book so I don't have to. I can just focus on writing the books no one else has yet. And Erica is focusing on writing the books that no one else has yet. And I don't know, that just kind of blew my socks off. And I asked permission to share it because it's a beautiful way to think about other people's writing and our own writing. No one will ever write the books that we are writing. There are no new ideas under the sun. There really aren't. We cannot be completely original. And because we are unique, we are completely original in our own way. We may be retelling a story that has been told since time began in different ways, but no one can do it like you can. No one can do it like you can. So please keep writing your stories. It matters. What else did I want to tell you about? Oh, a big thing, a really big thing. Unstuck, an audacious hunt for home and happiness, is now available. I was going to say everywhere, but it is not available everywhere. That's the whole point. For the next month, Unstuck will be available only at my Shopify store. It will be cheaper there than it will be when it goes up for sale everywhere else on all the other vendors. In about a month, you will be able to buy it at any vendor and any independent bookstore, and you will be able to order it for your library if that is the way you want to do it. I love that so much. But it's going to be cheaper over at my bookstore, which is called RachelHerronBooks.com. Quite easy. RachelHerronBooks.com. You just got to spell Rachel right, but then you're halfway there. RachelHerronBooks.com. Unstuck is right there at the top. You can buy it in ebook, paperback, or audiobook right now. Lala has done an amazingly gorgeous job doing the Shopify site. Thank God, because I wouldn't have had time to do that either. So that is available over there if you want to read the book. If you didn't get in on the Kickstarter, if you've been waiting for the book, as people have been telling me that they have, you can order it now, RachelHerronBooks.com. Please go grab a copy of Unstuck. I'm getting fabulous feedback from people about it, and it's awesome. It makes me feel great. It makes me feel incredibly great, and I'm just going to say thank you. And please go check that out. So that is up and available, and there will be a link in the show notes, so you can just scroll over to your phone or your computer and go click that link and go look at it. So that's the big news, and I believe it is available. I believe we said it available internationally. You can get it anywhere: ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Oh, that is exciting. That is exciting. I expect to announce it to the newsletter list soon. It is something that I have not done because I just thought right now that I should put that on my list of things to do. I have quite a long list, and I do love a list. All right, let's talk to Polly now, because you're going to love this. You seriously. Polly Campbell is the author of You Recharged: How to Beat Fatigue, Mostly, Amp Up Your Energy, Usually, and Enjoy Life Again, Always. Such a great title. And 3 other books. She is the host of the Simply Right with Polly Campbell podcast, which I have been on, and you should go look up, and the Polly Campbell Simply Said podcast, and her magazine articles regularly appear online and in print. Check out Polly's Simply Right column on Substack at simplyright.substack.com. Here's the interview. Please enjoy. Please get some of your own writing done and then come tell me about it. And if you want to come write with us, come do Rachel Says Right. That's all I got. All right, here we go. Well, I could not be more pleased to welcome you to the show. Will you please share your name and pronouns with us?
My name is Polly Campbell, and I'm answer to anything, but I'm she, her.
Thank you very much. It's such a treat to have you on the show. I was on your show not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
Was it
I,
maybe
I think
few months ago?
yeah, we talked a few months ago. I think it aired like 3 or 4 weeks ago on Simply Right. So
Yes.
go and listen to Rachel.
Simply
It
right.
was I was fangirling a little bit there, but
It was, well,
it was a great
now
conversation.
I get to fangirl over you, because it was just such a great conversation that I immediately, you know, left that and jumped into email and said, come on my show so we could talk some more. And now we're going to talk about you and your process, because as you know, that's what we talk about on this show. Could I ask you about your writing process? Where and how does writing fit into your life?
My writing process is really a lifestyle process, honestly, at this point. I have all these little things that I do that really don't involve writing directly, but they get me to that place where I can write. So
Oh,
I
tell
get
me.
up right now. I get up real early. We have a daughter who's in high school, and I get up around her schedule so I can be done when she gets home for the 5 minutes that she's choosing to talk to me these days. But I'll get up early, and I do that on purpose. I'm not a morning person, but I get up because I need that hour to myself. So I'll get up at
Mhm.
5:30 or 6. Now it's nice. We're in summer here in the northern hemisphere in Oregon, and I'll go out for a little walk, 20 minutes, just to kind of stretch and watch the sun come up and hear the birds. And I'll come in, and then it doesn't matter what time of year, but the very next thing I do is I sit down and I do morning pages. And Julia
Ah,
Cameron talks about these. Mine are real sloppy stream of consciousness venting. I love the world. I hate the world. I'm so grateful for whatever. I'm really into fountain pens right now. I'm learning about fountain pens. So often I'm just trying different colors of ink out.
that's
But
my favorite one
Rachel,
right here.
oh, that's
Yep.
beautiful. Yes, I'm looking for I got one for recently. So, um, but no matter what I get out during that session, if I don't do it, I feel really ungrounded for the day. And so I think it's kind of become like my meditation. Sometimes I still meditate, and I'll do that 20 minutes either before or after the writing, but really that writing has become kind of a meditation for me.
I love that
And
you say that meditation is about being in the moment, right? And so when we're sitting on our meditation cushion and trying to be in the moment. A lot of times I find that very hard. But when we are writing, we are in the moment. In the moment, you cannot be writing and not be in that moment and be thinking and following your thoughts. Isn't that incredible that we get that
I love
experience?
that. Yeah, and I think that's why it's grounding for me, right? And I write by
Mhm.
hand. So, during that time, so I hear the scratch of on the paper and I turn the pages and it's like a thing for me. Like
Yeah.
that and a cup of coffee. If I have that time, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever I can get, I'm good to go. And then I'll go out about my life. I feed my daughter, she gets off to school. Then I come into the office and I start with administrative stuff. And it's about 10 o'clock that I really start the writing. But I feel like all those steps are my process.
Oh, that is so good. I adore that. And when you get the administrative stuff, well, let me ask you this: how often? Selfish question: how often does the administrative stuff derail you or take you longer than you think it will? Because for me, it's like every day.
I was that's my answer every day. I'm particularly frustrated with it right now. First of all, I love the podcast and I know you can relate to this and a lot of your viewers and listeners can relate too. We have that other thing that is also important to us, right? Whether
Mhm,
it's our daughter or the podcast or getting the invoices out
mhm,
or whatever it is you're doing and I can get sucked down there. And then if I don't work on the project or the book or the thing that I'm doing, um, in that core center, it's between 10 and 1 or 2 that I'm really my most focused. I feel like that's when I
mhm.
try to do the writing. But often whatever happens in the morning bleeds into that. And then the dog needs to go out. And then, oh, I need to eat something because I'm getting a headache. And pretty soon it's 1 o'clock and I haven't done what I wanted to do on the writing. And that is a real challenge for me right now in particular.
It never stops being a challenge. What method do you use to keep yourself writing when you're writing? Do you do timed writing? Are you working by word count? What do you look for?
I never do word count because I find that um, I don't do a lot of heavy editing while I'm writing the first draft, but even so, I'll change things here and out, and I would punish myself. Well, I might have written 2,000 words, but if it only shows 1,000 at the end of the day, I don't want to
Yeah.
be that narrow for myself. But I do
Yeah.
timed writing. So,
Mhm.
and I do that not because I want to hit a mark, but because I need to hold myself accountable. And if I know I'm going to write for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, I might write for 2 hours, but I'll do it in 10 or 20-minute increments. Then at
Yes.
least I know, well, I only have 5 more minutes to go. I can do that, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And Rachel, what I find when I set that timer is I just after a few minutes, it's like working out, right? The first couple minutes of my exercise, like, oh, I'm never gonna make it 20 minutes or a half hour. With writing, once I'm into that 10 minutes, I'm like so sucked in and so jazzed and I'm going. So that's really my way to, on the days when I'm really struggling with that focus or whatever, I'll just say, fine, I'll come back to these invoices or whatever I need to do next, but I'm going to set the timer to 10 o'clock, set the timer for 10 minutes and just at least get that on the page. And
Yes.
then it runs away with me.
It runs away with you, and also I really do think it's important to be okay with if we say, "I'm only gonna write for 10 minutes, I've just gotta get 10 minutes," then we really are okay. That if at the end of 10 minutes we're like, "Done,"
Absolutely.
fabulous, and we get the gold star. But
Yep.
between you and me, that usually gets us in the saddle and we're ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard a quote, I think it was Attica Locke who said it, the great mystery author, that the way she gets to it, and this has really helped me. She said, I just decide to write badly. Every day I sit down and say, okay,
Yes.
it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna write bad stuff. Because I would think that I know that intellectually that it's gonna start there, right? But
Mhm.
just I don't know, declaring that is like, oh well, at least I wrote bad stuff today. That's something, and you can celebrate that.
It's huge, and I don't want anybody who has never tried this to, like, not try this. I gave myself a challenge a long time ago that I would sit down and try to write badly. Not even allow myself to write badly, but I would try to write as badly as I could, and my whole body protested against it because I like to get things right and I like to do things well, and I made myself write badly, and it didn't kill me, and it kind of gave my brain this knowledge like, "Oh, you can write badly, and it's really not that bad, and you can fix it later." And I still use that on the days I can't start. I will start anywhere. I'll start a sentence. I will stop it 4 words in, no punctuation. I'll go somewhere else and it's nothing fits together, but I'm getting words on the page. Yeah. Okay, well, so
Agreed.
that excited me. What is the most exciting thing that you've ever realized about your writing process?
And I've been doing this a long time. I've been a full-time writer for like 25 years and all kinds of things I've written. And I really think this year is the first time I really realized what people mean by faith in the process. And I'm not
Mm,
talking God faith, although it can
mhm,
be that for you. But
mhm.
everybody's like, just sit down, trust the process, have faith in the process. I'm like, baloney. I'm going to micromanage this. I'm going to make my list. I'm going to do it this way. And, you can do all that. And what I've really found is even when it goes to pot, even when it's not working out, somehow it happens, right? It might happen 6 months from now. I've written several books now, and in every one of those books, every article I've written, every essay I've published, I've had a moment where I suck. I'm never going to write again. Nobody will ever read this. Editors are going to turn me back. I'm going to lose my client. I'm going to whatever. And then I sit down and I keep going and it still somehow happens. And I do think it's a little magic, and I do think it's a little human, and I do think it's a little the universe and discipline
Mhm.
and all those things. But it happens, and that's that faith for me now. Be open to the process. Keep doing the work. You don't have to know how it's going to happen. Just
Yeah.
know that it will.
Know that it will, and you said it yourself, if you show up and do some
You got
work.
to show up.
All we have to do is show up and do some work. That is
Yep.
literally all. If we show up for 10 minutes a day, 40 minutes a day, the work gets done. Books get complete. I used to be
Right.
so frustrated when my books would not get complete, but I wasn't showing up. So it's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. What part of the writing do you struggle with the most?
We touched on it. Right now, I'm really frustrated with the way my schedule's going,
Mhm,
where to put my priorities. And this
mhm.
is, I write because I love to write and I'm curious about the world, and that's the part I enjoy coming to. But in order to have that privilege of writing, I've got to pay my bills and I've got to work with clients and I've got to send out invoices and meet with publishers and send out emails for the podcast and all those things. And it's not that I dislike those things. It's just not my where I want to spend most of my energy.
Mm.
And I have to remind myself that first of all, some days are better at that than other days, and and it is a job. And if I were going to somebody else's office, they'd expect me to be there at 9, ready to work or whatever it is. So I
Mhm.
need to pay attention to that too. And then it earns me the privilege of being able to sit around the next 3 hours or 4 hours and just play with ideas, and so that's the payoff. So I'm trying to be patient with myself. I'm struggling with it this week. We're headed out to do some family celebrations and traveling, and I feel very entrepreneurial because that puts the smack effort of the business right on my back to get it done before I go, because nothing's happening while I'm gone, right? So
Yeah.
we're self-employed, we're entrepreneurs, and balancing the business demands with the writing desires is tricky sometimes for me.
But honoring this job and the fact that it is just like any other job, you show up and you do the work because you are beholden to the boss. And in this case, we are the boss and we can be very kind to ourselves. But even people who are listening who have a day job and have 7 kids and you get I remember when I had the day job and I was writing just for maybe I was usually about 45 minutes at 4 in the morning before I would go to the job. I made myself show up for that job too. Like my boss expects me to start work at 4 a.m. and I'm gonna work till 4:45 and then I will stop. And treating it like a job really changed a lot of things for me in a good way, not in a
Yeah,
bad disciplinary way, but in a, oh, I can expect this of myself. Just I live up to all of my expectations, all of my that other people put on me. So I will live up to this too.
I totally agree. I've done this for a long time, and I've done it when I was single and living on my own. I
Mhm.
did it when I was married. I'm still married, same guy too. So that's working for today. And I did it before we had children. I've been the sole provider. I raised my daughter working part time while I was writing, and it's never been any different. Right.
Yeah.
Right now, I have more freedom. She's on her own. She's 17. She's on her own quite a bit, more independent. I can work when I want, and I'm still struggling with that. So that it don't wait for the thing to happen. It's
Yes.
never going to be the right time.
Yes.
Just do it. If you can decide not to do it, then don't. Do something else, pursue another hobby or profession. But if you have no choice, then hold yourself accountable and get the job done because you'll feel better in the long run. And it's what you're meant to do if that's the case.
And I can point out that people who are listening to podcasts like yours and mine, they're meant to do this work. No one who
Absolutely.
doesn't want to be a writer, who isn't a writer, spends their time writing podcasts. That is your sign that you are, that you can do this. And yes, like you said, getting comfortable with the discomfort. It's never going to be easy. We're never going to have enough time. I read something earlier today that said you will never have more free time than you do right now. Period. Even if you think, "Oh, I'll do that when I retire. Or I'll do that
Absolutely.
when the kids, go to 3rd grade." It's now. It's
Yeah.
now.
My
Mm.
mom was a teacher and she would say that about her job too. I just think it's how we're wired, always trying to do more, 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 more.
Yeah, yeah.
And I find that the longer I practice as a writer, I just am trying to be more deliberate in the doing, right? In the being with it. And that's helping me kind of settle myself. So when I do get down, I'm more productive on the page, I think.
Do you all see, as we're talking to Polly, why I wanted her on my show? So I'm already
Well, I'm
inspired. All right.
excited.
Could you please brag to us? I would like you to brag. What part of writing are you really, really good at?
Yeah, isn't I think we need to do more bragging, and
Yes, we do.
even hearing you ask that, then I'm like, but
It's good practice.
I'm really good at voice in my work.
Oh,
I've
at
written
voice,
4
yes.
nonfiction books. I am
Mhm.
working on a novel. I've written thousands of magazine articles, and, so they're all different. They're all different readers. They're all different topics. But I think I'm really good at connecting through my authorial voice to getting it on the page, to translating different ideas so other people can understand and feel it and actually feel a connection. I take that very seriously. I'm working this stuff out too, and the things I choose to write about, I'm learning along the way, and I want that to be obvious and accessible, and I think we're all in this together. And so I really worked hard on, and I was a journalist in the very beginning, and that's a totally different voice. So it took me a long time to learn, like, oh, I could be a little more human here, right? I could have an opinion. I could use that word, even if it's too fancy schmancy or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So I'm
I
proud of
love
that.
that. Okay, so I frequently have people and students ask me, how do I find my voice? And I think you just connected a word that is so important with voice. Voice is your humanity and how you show that, right? In an authentic way that other people can meet you. But to those people who say, I'm new at this, I'm concerned. How do I find my voice? How do I get more of it or less of it? Or what do I do? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, start by looking how you talk in the world, right? I
Yes, yes.
imagine when you go to the grocery store checker, you're using different words and different phrasing than you do with your kid who has just spilled
Mhm.
grape juice all over the white couch, or your husband who forgot the milk, or your best friends when you're out for happy hour. We all have, now it's still true to us. All those voices are true.
Yes.
Um, we're more polite with some people, we're more formal with other people. That's still who we are. But listen, start to understand the rhythm of how you go through the world, how you see it, the words you choose. And then if you're writing essays or memoirs or, fiction, think of the character in those people. When I write my articles, many times I'm called on to be the expert. They want me to present
Mhm.
certain information. So I'm going to look at the reader I'm communicating that to, and I'm going to visualize that person. When the last book I wrote came from an idea an experience I was having in my own life, but I knew a friend who was also having that experience. So I thought of her. Is this how I would talk to her if we were out for, a drink or a cup of coffee? Is this how I would? Are these
Mm.
how we would relate when I'm writing an article about yoga or psychological well-being? I'm going to help you feel safer because you can trust me. I have done the research, so I'm going to share this information, but I'm not going to pretend like I'm some professor. I'm not. I'm just a mom who has studied this stuff for a really long time. So I'm going to use words that are not only consistent to me if I were talking to the doctor, but also words that you might want to use yourself if you're asking for that kind of help. So I always have the reader in mind, all the way down very specific. You know, Rachel, when you write a book proposal or a pitch, they want to know who your readers are. Well, I find the reader in my head, in my life. Oh, yeah, she's somebody or he's somebody who might read this book. That's who I'm writing it for. And
I
it
love
helps
that.
me remember the conversations we would have or choose that tone.
And the real conversations. I'm reading a book right now. What is it called? I will not remember the author, but it is My Life is a no wait, My Mess is a Bit of a Life.
Oh,
And it's
right.
a great title, and it is written by a woman who is very anxious, and she's talking about her very anxious childhood, and everything comes through this lens of anxiety. And I know that when she goes to the grocery store, she talks to the checker in an anxious way,
Yeah.
and she talks to this person in an anxious way. And I went to a comedy club last night where there were some severely depressed comedians on stage, and I could tell that they were morose wherever they went, but that was their voice, and they were using it for humor. And I know them in real life. When I meet them, they say very funny and depressing things, but that is their voice. That's how they move through the world. And I think you and I share a really similar voice in positive, encouraging, sharing facts, sharing information, and there is no right or wrong way to have a voice, but your reminder to be that we're all able to look at the way we communicate with everybody in all aspects of our lives. What are the unifying threads, and how can you use that as a gift? Because her anxious book that I'm reading, I'm loving every anxious word of it. I am
Yeah,
here for
we
every one of
relate
them.
to that. It
Yes,
yes.
yes.
When I was writing my first book a million years ago, and it's a personal development book about how do we reach acceptance and go through our life. And I had the hardest time getting into that book. And finally, I sat down with like 6 chapters in my hand, and I thought, well, this is just the first book. No wonder it's hard. And I read the chapters, and I sounded like some gray-haired white male professor. And I am so far from that. I'm like, this sounds like a textbook. No wonder. It doesn't sound like me. It doesn't feel it's not even fun.
It was
And
boring
so I went
you. Yeah,
right. I
yeah,
went back and I changed that and the book just flew because I was I was in my base. I know who I am and that
yeah.
helped. But sometimes I have to rediscover that on the page, depending on what you're writing for. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. There's nothing wrong there. That's
Oh,
how
that's
we
what
learn.
revision is for,
Right.
right?
Right.
That is
Totally.
beautiful. Thank you for that. Voice is so tricky. I always say that voice is like your accent, that it everyone else can hear it. It's very
Absolutely.
hard
I
for us to hear it, but it's easy for people to tell us what it is.
And it's hard because we don't want to put in all the ums and all the long winding sentences
Yeah,
that I'm using in this conversation. But I do have certain words and certain inflections that I use. And so do you, and so does everyone.
mhm,
So it's about getting patient with yourself and starting to pay attention. But that's what writers do, right? No matter what you're writing, you
yeah,
start to pay attention. Take that in a little bit. How are you really? How's the checker talking to you? I was
yeah.
at the dentist this morning and she was telling me about this thing she learned about bats. And I was totally like all in on this conversation about bats at the dentist. And I just totally was listening to her words and this dentist talking about bats. And I thought, that's the writer in me. You hear it everywhere when you go looking for it.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, I absolutely love that. That is gorgeous. Thank you. What is the kindest thing you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
Um, I think this was a tricky one for me, but I think I left a soul sucking job when it made no sense. I had no money. I was young. I was self supporting. I was not raised that way um, because I knew if I didn't, I was going to die. I mean, at some point, and it might have been when I was 95, it might have been when I was 25. I just knew that doing the thing is a lot easier than sitting back and wondering if I could do the thing. Um, and I had to go do it. And I had all sorts of protection behind me. I knew I would go deliver papers in the middle of the night to pay the bills if I was very organized about it. I planned for it, but I had no money. I went to the Small Business Administration. They said, wait until you have like 3 years of income. I'm like, okay, I had like half a month. So, but my back was to the wall and I cared about this more than anything else. And I
Yeah.
figured I am going to do whatever it takes. And I didn't need to. It
Look at
worked.
you now. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is such a gorgeous, kind thing to do. You
It
you
was
did what you
scary
had
as
to do.
heck.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I say if there's a choice in this for you, then and like you said, your listeners and your audience, there's no choice. I hear how they talk to you and I listen to you. I mean, I've been listening to you for years and there's no choice for us. So that's okay. Just understand that about yourself. That's not a flaw. That's not because you're crazy. That's not because you're, wild, eccentric, depressed author. I'm none of those. Well, wild and eccentric, but I've come to terms with that. But it's just what I do. And so I am prepared to figure out any way I can to do it that is legal and healthy for me.
I love that so much.
Yes.
Can you, and you may have already alluded to this, but can you tell us about a specific moment that you knew you had ink in your veins?
Yeah, I was such a nerdy little kid. And I was in second grade. I mean, it wasn't a choice for me. And I talked this teacher into letting me do a class paper. And so we did this. A bunch of us little nerdy kids wrote these little articles for the paper. And then she took it home to mimeograph it. I don't know if anybody remembers, but we had to,
I love the
run it on a
smell of
mimeograph
it.
machine.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
the ink. Yes.
mhm.
And when it came back, she had changed almost every article in a big way.
No.
And it sounded very good and very grown up. And I went home to my parents, who are awesome, and they said, "Yeah, that's really disappointing. How would you handle this if you're?" And I my dad said, "You might need to have a meeting." So I went and set up a meeting with her and I wore my good clothes and we had a meeting. And I explained to her that I felt like she had over edited and that it sounded like her and not us. And I knew we were only second graders and this whole, I will never forget it. And you know what? She rounded up all the copies of the paper, went back and put our original paper back together and brought it the next day. And she just passed away a couple of years ago. She's a huge influence in my life.
That is the best story.
Uh, so I was
The fact that your parents supported you, the fact that
right.
you understood the emotion that went through you when you saw that your words had been edited in a way that you wouldn't have done, and that your parents supported you, and that you had the conversation with the teacher, and the fact that she understood and honored the artistic intent. Ah!
There's so much there, Rachel, that I'm getting chills now. I'm getting a little emotional
Yes.
because yes, my parents didn't fix it, right?
Right.
And that woman, Miss Gray, Barbara Gray, she um she heard me and she heard all our little voices. And the other part of that is we knew it wasn't that good. We were 7,
We were okay with it. We were
right?
7. We're all
It was
right.
what we did.
Yes.
And so that we could figure that all those things came together. And in that moment, I think it's like, oh, wait, people can do, because I didn't know any writers. I watched TV, but I didn't know anybody that did it.
You
And
also learned in that moment that your voice matters. I was a scared child and a shy child, and I didn't tend to speak out. And I think that if that had happened to me, I would have learned the lesson like, oh, what I turned in wasn't good enough. And I see that she did it better. And I don't know if I would have become a writer if I had gone that way, but you
I don't
learned the
know either.
opposite lesson.
I mean, I
You
was sick to my stomach, like the whole thing.
Yeah,
Like,
which is why you remember it, because we only remember
yeah,
moments of really high emotion.
high
Yeah.
emotion. Yeah, but she also was the woman that, got me into she found out this lady in town was teaching typing to some kids, and she figured out that I could get out of one of my classes to go sit in a supply cabinet and learn to type because I she's like, "Fine, if you're gonna be a writer, you you gotta learn to type."
She changed your whole life, Ms. Barbara
Absolutely,
Gray. Oh,
absolutely.
how gorgeous. Thank you for sharing that story.
And the thing is, find those people. I know we don't all come from families that say, "Oh, okay, well, whatever you want to do." And I know I mean, I've had my fill of other things too. When I quit my job to become a writer, my boss at the time told me I'd never make it. But
Lovely.
you find, yeah, I did, by the way. But and I'm not a bestseller, but that's okay. I'm
Yeah.
making a living as a writer. So find the people that believe what you believe. Because when on the days when you're floundering, and there will be days, there have been for me many days, then there's always been somebody else that's like, oh, remember when you did this? Remember that you did this, you've been through this before. Find those people. It's our responsibility, I think, to find those people in our partners or our friends or our
Mhm.
teachers or whoever.
We must find those people, and then once we're further down the track, we must become those people. We must continue to
Absolutely.
find the people. We still have to always be surrounded by people who can bolster us, but I think what you do a great job of exemplifying is being that person for other people also. So
Well, your
you've got
podcast
Barbara
did that
Gray
for
going
me.
through you.
Yeah, Barbara Gray. But we learn from the other
Yeah.
women in our lives too, from paying
Yes.
attention. So
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. All right. Can you please tell us about the best book that you read recently and why did you love
this is hard, but I
it?
like the way you phrase the question because when people say, "What's your favorite book?" Like I'm like, "Oh my
No,
god, that's."
impossible. Yeah.
Yes, that is impossible. Well, this was totally unexpected. But I just finished reading Vera. I'm reading it. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jesse Sutanto. Um, and it's a mystery. It's about culture and the Asian American culture and family and where we find that. And it's all under this mystery. And it was a happy, thinky read, but not heavy. And I really surprised me.
Oh.
I just felt like it was fun and the writing was good, but it wasn't like a heavy literary read. It was just like, oh, I feel better because I read that book. And I
Love
just
that.
started this book by Steve Almond, brand new. Truth is the arrow, mercy is the bow. It's a
Mm.
book about writing craft. I read one writing craft usually while I'm reading my other stuff too. And I start my morning usually with a passage from a writing book. Also, A Thousand Words of Summer is really aspiring. It's by Jamie Attenberg.
Oh, yeah, she's great. She's great.
So that's been
Yeah.
if you want a little writing inspiration, pick up Rachel's books or read Almond and Attenberg and
Thank you. Thank you so much for those. Now, will you please absolutely self-promote? Tell us about where we can find you, your books, your podcast, all of that.
Please buy all my stuff so I can keep doing this,
Yes,
please.
yes.
This is my newest book, You Recharged.
Gorgeous.
Um,
Lovely cover.
How to beat fatigue, mostly amp up your energy usually and enjoy life again always. This came out of a sort of midlife crisis. And I had to figure some things out. I was feeling stuck in my career and other things. And so in my learning process, I wrote a book. That's the newest one, and you can get that wherever. And I've also got the podcast Simply Write with Polly Campbell, and it's about writing. We interview authors. We talk about writing business aspects, sometimes craft. And there's a Substack that I had that is simplywrite.substack.com, and you can join that. And we have all kinds of stuff going there and links to the podcast, but we do go deeper into craft. And I just wrote a whole series on pacing and how to create that in your work. And so I'd love it if people track me down. You could also you can connect with me there if you want to email me or have something about this show or whatever else. I'm happy to answer the questions.
Perfect. I know that you are going to get new followers from being here. It is such a delight to talk to such a kindred spirit. Thank
Uh,
you for being here, Polly.
Ditto. It means a lot to be invited on the show. I've followed you and I've learned a lot from you and I really appreciate your energy. So thank
Thank you,
you.
Polly.